Kurdran followed the guard around the walkway until he reached the high seat. A boisterous crowd of dwarves stood outside the chamber, their faces awash in a combination of shadow and light from the fiery iron braziers that burned throughout the city. Members of each clan were present, bronzebeards and polished silver plates, tattooed wildhammers adorned with griffin feathers, and ashen-skinned dark irons clad in work aprons and smudged with soot. The gathering provided a miniature glimpse of Ironforge as a whole, with a small number of wildhammers and dark irons sprinkled among the city's bronzebeard majority. As Kurdran pushed his way through the crowd, he caught fragments of the heated conversations taking place among the dwarves. The bronzebeards kept our piece of Morimus's hammer as it was, as it should be. You kept it stuffed away in your library gathering dust. The wildhammers made something new out of our piece. Och, lad, no use arguing with the bronzebeard about this. Every good piece of wares that come out of Ironforge is just something they've pilfered from an ancient vault, a nearby griffin rider yelled. Someone among the throng shoved the speaker into Kurdran, and the crowd shifted, closing in around him. "Make way!" Kurdran shouted. A few of the dwarves nearest to him made a path. Others glared, their faces contorted in anger. "Make way for Kurdran, representative of the butterflies," a voice roared sarcastically, using a derogatory term for Kurdran's clan. "A round whale on me if Kurdran agrees to give up his piece of the Morimus hammer. No dwarf with his head on straight would pass up wagering against that." Kurdran elbowed through the last line of dwarves and emerged in the high seat. The chamber, home to Ironforge's regency, was like the rest of the city, dim and shadowy with high metallic stone walls illuminated in the glow of hanging lamps. At the back of the room atop a raised platform were 3 identical thrones of the Council of Three Hammers. A chill went through Kurdran as his eyes locked with the middle throne, once that of King Magni. When Kurdran had joined the council, Magni's brother Muradin had taken him to the lower depths of the ancient city. There Kurdran had seen an image that would haunt his dreams. Magni transformed into a diamond statue. The petrification had happened while the king had been performing a mystic ritual to commune with the earth and glean answers as to the troubling quakes, storms and other calamities befalling the world at the time. Now Muradin stood at the central throne. Kurdran glanced at the bronzebeard dwarf who glared back balefully. It was a far cry from the jovial welcome that he had given Kurdran upon entering the city. In his first days on the council, Kurdran had shared many pints of ale with Muradin and recounted his tales of Outland, while the bronzebeard had told of his adventures in the frozen continent of Northrend. As the days had worn on, Muradin had grown cold to Kurdran for reasons that the wildhammer did not understand. To Muradin's right stood Moira Thorisan, Magni's daughter. Despite having devastated her father by marrying into the Bronzebeard clan's former rivals, the Dark Irons, she was legal heir to Ironforge, as was her small toddler Dagran, who was rocking idly in a crib at Moira's feet. The heiress, with her hair drawn up in perfect buns, bowed slightly at Kurdran. "Welcome, Kurdran." "Aye," was all that Kurdran said. He marched past a wooden table standing at the bottom of the ramp to the thrones. On the table were 2 artifacts that had, in the past week, stirred the simmering cauldron of Ironforge into a torrent. A gnarled wooden staff with a deep violet gem set in it, and a scarred, warped hammerhead. Kurdran grimaced at the sight of the relics and took his place at the throne to Muradin's left. Not for the first time since he had come to Ironforge to rule alongside Moira and Muradin, he felt out of place. The council was thick with Bronzebeard and, due to Dagran, Dark Iron blood, but not on Kurdran's side of the thrones. The babble of voices at the entrance to the high seat died down, and Advisor Belgrim, a wizened dwarf standing at the foot of the platform, bowed. 2 younger historians standing nearby mirrored Belgrim's gesture of respect. One of them was a short wildhammer dwarf dressed in a bright red tunic, a very thorough fact-checker by all accounts. Belgrim straightened and shuffled forward. "Welcome, Thane Kurdran. I take it you've made your decision?" Kurdran took in the room. Everything was the same as it had been in recent days. The same question, the same crowd of bickering dwarves, the same feeling of being cornered. On each previous occasion he had answered Belgrim in the same way. No. Yet just last night, a wildhammer and a bronzebeard had been killed during a petty brawl concerning the sceptre in Kurdran's hands. "I dinna think I have a choice," Kurdran replied. "Och," Muradin sighed. "How many times are you going to go on about—" "Kurdran," Moira interrupted. Of the three of us, it is you who have the most to sacrifice. If you choose to keep your piece of the hammer, we will forgo what we have planned." Kurdran's attention shifted to a tattered scroll in Belgrim's aged and trembling fist. The parchment, discovered in Ironforge's library a week prior, depicted parts of the Dwarven Civil War centuries past. As the story went, when the High King of Ironforge Modimus Anvilmar had died, the clans had battled for control of the city. In the process, Modimus's weapon, the Hammer of the High King, had mysteriously disappeared. Over the years, Kurdran had heard his share of rumors regarding what had become of the hammer. The parchment put an end to the speculation. It said that Modimus's hammer had been broken into 3 pieces. During the chaos of the war, each clan had in one way or another managed to obtain one of the fragments. Faced with the uncertain future of Ironforge, Kurdran surmised, the dwarves foolishly saw mending the hammer as a path to peace, or simply an outlet for their old rivalries and animosity. Kurdran shook his gaze from the scroll. "I've made me decision," he yelled, lifting the iron scepter in his hand. "This heirloom has been a part of the Wildhammer clan for centuries. I joined this council to maintain peace, not argue over reforging an old hammer." Angry shouts rose from the shifting mass of stout dwarven onlookers. "The hammer was Modimus's to begin with. It belongs to the city. If the Wildhammers dinna want peace, they dinna belong on the council." Kurdran looked on, agitated, as the throng closed in on the few Wildhammer dwarves in the crowd, just as armed guards were rushing in to quell the unrest. "But one of me clansmen is now dead because of this hammer," Kurdran bellowed over the clamour. "I'll not have it happen again." He squeezed the Wildhammer scepter in his hand one last time and set it down on the wooden table, alongside the other artifacts, with a hollow thud. The crowd went silent. Belgrim nodded and raised his hands to everyone present. "So it is, by decree of the council, that the great hammer of Modimus Anvilmar, last High King of Ironforge, will be reforged." A roar of applause rose from the dwarves in attendance, and Kurdran scowled. "As you now see," Belgrim continued, "from the Wildhammers comes the handle of Modimus's hammer, taken by one of the clan and reforged into a scepter carried by Thane Kurdran, and before him Thane Cardros." Kurdran eyed the scepter. Its size and shape was slightly different from the description of the hammer handle in the parchment. He remembered asking Cardros years ago where the scepter had come from. The elder dwarf had simply replied that the heirloom's past was not important. Its significance lay only in what it had become. Kurdran had always viewed the Thane's ambiguous explanation as one of his usual philosophical musings, perhaps even a metaphor for the Wildhammer clan. Now he wondered if it had been Cardros who had taken the handle and reshaped it, never speaking of its origins again. Belgrim gestured to the deformed hammerhead atop the wooden table. "From the Bronzebeards comes the head of Modimus's hammer, damaged beyond recognition in a fire during the Civil War and tended to in the city's library along with other debris gathered in memory of the conflict." Then Belgrim extended a hand to the gnarled staff adjacent to the hammerhead. "And from the dark irons comes the once golden-hued crystal that had been set in the head of Modimus's hammer, found by one of the clan's sorcerers and altered in colour to hide its identity." Loud erratic applause issued forth from the dark irons in attendance. "The forging will begin 3 days from now. For the time being, the council asks that you go about your business as it chooses who will reforge the pieces," Belgrim said. The onlookers slowly dissipated, picking up their fiery arguments where they had left off, as though the meeting had never happened. Kurdran stared hard at the Wildhammer scepter resting on the wooden table. A troubling question ate at him. What more in the weeks and months to come would Ironforge strip away from him and his clan? Without a word he descended from the stone platform and strode toward the exit of the high seat. "Kurdran," Moira called after him with concern, "we have yet to decide who will forge the hammer." "It doesn't matter," Kurdran growled as he left the room. "Well, before we go on, I think I need to wet my whistle. You're thirsty as well, aren't you? I can tell. Innkeep, get me 2 pints of ale for me and my new friend here. Hang on. This isn't Deepwater Tavern. How did we... What?